Okay, so a few technical difficulties. Steve, do you know how to get this going? It's not. Please be patient. I'm having some technical difficulties with my camera. No, it's me. It's not. How do you want to go live? I had Amy from SAPA show me how to do this. And it's not working right. Okay, well, we're not going to be able to go live with the camera, but I am recording, and they should be able to hear. So let's get started. Welcome to the Springfield Town Library. This is our candidate forum for the state representative. And want to thank everybody for coming. And please remember that if you want to ask a question, please raise your hand and I will bring the microphone over to you. Okay. So we'd like to start with our first candidate, Keith Stern. And the first question to all of you is give us a 2-minute brief bio about who you are and what you want to tell us about yourselves for people that don't know you.
Okay, I'm a lifelong resident of Vermont, Springfield. I've owned 2 businesses, one here in Springfield and one in White River Junction. The White River Junction one we had for 35 years, very successful. And one of the things we're most proud of is when we started it, our goal was to make produce affordable for everybody, so they could afford to eat more. And I'm proud to say that's what we accomplished. When we closed our business, we had people sending letters to the editor praising how well we did for them. And that's what I want to bring to Montpelier.
Thank you. And we have Christy Morris.
Sure. So my name is Christy Morris, and I too have lived in Springfield, not lifelong yet, because I hope to continue for a few more years. But for 73 years, I have lived in Springfield entirely. Both my wife and I were educated here in primary schools. We married here years ago. We just celebrated our, let's see, I'll get it wrong here, 53rd anniversary. And we raised 2 children here. They went through the schools, and we have 7 grandkids and 2 great-grandchildren that still live in the area. I was employed at Lovejoy Tool Company for 44 years, where I retired in 2018, but I remain active there, working under contractual basis to help them out. I'm also an on-call firefighter in Springfield. I service fire and EMS. I've been a member of that for 51 years now. And I'm dedicated to Springfield. I am a select board member as well. And I'm currently in my 17th year for that. Yeah, I'm dedicated to Springfield and the service to all and Vermonters, and trying to make it so that we can not necessarily make it affordable, but that we can actively engage with all Vermonters, not just the ones that have means.
Okay, and Judy?
I've been in Springfield since 1969, actually October. I came from Indiana to Fort McClellan, Alabama, to Fort Benjamin Harrison, Indiana, Fort Bragg down in North Carolina, and then up to Fort Devens for a while. So I've been around. I did serve 2 years in the Army as a photojournalist. And then I went to work in Gear Shaper. I was there for 2 years. Things got slacked. We got laid off. And shortly I cleaned houses is something I hate to do. But to earn the money when I couldn't get another job, I did spring cleaning for people. And then I met Keith and we got married and we started the business. We hired a lot of teenagers and they were lectured, and my daughter did it too, that you keep your grades up. If your grades go down, you're out of here because you won't have a job. This is just a fill-in for you and you need to work for your future. And they did it. We had a lot of kids that are well educated. One is a assistant professor at Selby Collier. One's an oncology nurse and teaches at McGill in Canada. They've got multitude. We still hear from them. And after I retired in 2018 because I needed 2 knees replaced. My grandson had a bad back. My daughter's back got injured. So we retired, and I haven't really worked, but I had those knees replaced and I've had other things crop up. So, but I like to work at helping people.
Thank you. Alice? Yep. Want to move back?
So my name is Allison. Yeah. Is that what you need to do? Okay. My name is Alice Emmons. Can you hear me, Vicki? Good. I grew up in Springfield. I'm a native. I went through the Springfield school system, so I have a good understanding of the Springfield educational system. Also, I grew up in a family that was really a blue-collar family. My dad worked in the shop, worked at J&L, and my mother was a seamstress, and she sewed for a lot of folks in Springfield. I grew up in a household that really felt it was important to give back to your community and give back to your state, and I have lived that. I feel very strongly of working for our community of Springfield. I know that we have diverse opinions and diverse thoughts, and all of that should come to the table, and we should work together. I've done that in my life, I feel. After I grew up, and both my parents have now passed away, I live back at the family home that I grew up in. I also have worked at Fellows before they closed. And I also ran a small business of making lampshades. And I had that through the 80s and part of the 90s. And I ended up bringing that back home because my mother needed more care. So I look forward to this morning. I hope that there's quite a few questions from you, from everyone here, and thank you.
So Alice, keep the microphone now. I have one more question before I open it up to the audience. So I want you to think about the one quality that you have that will be most beneficial for you in the legislature. I know I always do this.
That's fine. I have always worked across the aisle. I have worked with folks who have a diversion in opinions and background. And I come to the legislative world and any world looking to bring people together to find common ground for the good. I don't like the divisiveness that's occurring.
Can you give an example of when you've done that?
So as I can give a number, but
Just one.
One of the examples, I am chair of a legislative committee. There's 11 of us in that committee. 4 of the 11 are Republicans, 1 is a progressive, and 6 are Democrats. And we all come from different parts of the state. For the legislation that comes out of my committee, 99% of that is unanimous. We had one bill that came out this past session that one person voted against it because it didn't go far enough. So by being able to bring your committee together, put all those opinions and viewpoints on the table and find common ground is what our legislative work is all about.
Thank you. Judy, same question. One quality that you have that's going to help you in the legislation, and give an example of when you've used that quality in everyday life. bring the microphone closer. Thank you.
Well, I know in fellows, they voted me a native-born native-born Vermonter, because even though we had disagreements at times, I was always listening to their opinion, not just mine, and we would work it out. And it was interesting with them, but it's been that and other things I've gone through here in Springfield. I was a member of the Planning Commission for 15 years, did a lot of work there. We all did well, and we had things we did disagree on. Closer, thank you. But nobody's going to agree with everything, but I always tried my best to do and to encourage them if they didn't think quite like I did, to explain my thinking. And I have volunteered.
You might want to wait.
As it goes, okay. I was one of the volunteers at the North Springfield Baptist Church when we had our warming shelter. Got along great with the people. I also volunteered at the one it was in Walpole and back in Bellows Falls. Worked there with the people, listened to them. And I try to understand everything. I won't, because none of us are perfect. But I like to work and see what other people have to say and then make my judgment from the whole consensus, not just one or two, but the whole thing around. That's the way I like to work.
Thank you. Christy, you had some time to think.
Time to think. I first want to preface this reply by the fact that we're giving an opinion or of our characteristics from ourselves, and I like to think I like to be judged by others, my peers, my critics, my friends, my family. Therefore, when I give a response to this question, it's an opinion, but others may disagree with it. And my characteristic that I think that I bring to the bargaining table is integrity. I have lived in Springfield, like I said, 73 years. I'm dedicated to my wife. We've been married 53 years. I'll get that one right. I've been a member of the fire department 51 years. Lovejoy Tool, 44. I've worked 2 businesses since retirement or since I graduated from college. 44 years at Lovejoy. I have an integrity and loyalty to the involvement of whatever entity it is that I associate with. Shriners Hospital. I've been a Shriner since 1985. Been a board member down in Springfield Shriners Children's for going on 9 years now. And I'm dedicated, and I want to see what the end all is in whatever the entity is. And I strive. I want to be around to see how it finishes before I finish.
Thank you.
Integrity.
Thank you.
That was
Keith.
more than one. Innovative thinking. If any business expert looked at how we ran our business, they would say we were a failure because we didn't do it according to what the experts say. I broke about every rule, and we ended up doing $2 million a year in sales the final couple of years. So we did something right. That's what I want to bring to Montpelier. Looking at different ways of doing things. The status quo isn't working. We can see that. The school system isn't right. You go down the list. It's just not right. There's got to be changes made. Throwing money at a problem without solving the problem is not a solution. And that's what I know I can bring to Montpelier.
Okay, so I'm going to follow up with a question about the school system and education. I was a teacher for 31 years, so it's something dear to my heart. I know that people are dissatisfied with the education that Springfielder children are getting and the way that it's funded. What specific suggestions do you each have to fix the problem? You can start, Keith.
I can start. Thank you. One thing that I know is a problem is the Department of Education do away with that, do away with the state school board, have the school boards, local school boards direct what's best for our schools. We don't need mandates being handed down from Montpelier, from Washington, that don't apply to our particular school system. We have to fix that. That's number one. Bring the local school boards together 2-3 times a year to meet, talk about issues, talking about what's really working well for them. Bring in people from really successful programs around the country to tell how they're doing it, so they have ideas. What we're doing now, it's just not working.
I'm going to follow up. So if we get rid of the Department of Education
Mhm.
and our volunteers, school board members, have to find the experts to come in, how's that going to work?
Oh, I'm not saying we won't have somebody there in Montpelier that's doing it, but not a complete school board like we have now. Somebody looking through the literature, looking and through hunting down successful programs and notifying the school districts. Hey, this is working great elsewhere in the country. Let's bring these people in to talk about it.
Okay, thank you. Christy, how are you going to fix the schools here in Springfield, and what should the legislature do? I mean, Keith is saying, dial it down in terms of the state. What is your thoughts?
Sure. So the schools, like healthcare that we'll get into later, is a very complicated situation. It's not easy. Back when George Bush mandated No Child Left Behind, that put a lot of social services and mental health efforts into our school systems. That was long after teachers were just held accountable for teaching writing, reading, arithmetic, the 3 R's, I guess they call it. So along with all the social services that are now implemented in our school systems, comes an expense, comes a distraction. If any of you have been in the schools to witness what's happening in a classroom, I would hate to think that that's how you raise your families. Teachers are no longer just teachers. They're mental health advocates, they're public safety advocates, they're counselors, they're babysitters, and it just goes on and on and on. They're not teaching. So if you try to think back to what education was when we were in school, it's not how it is anymore. The state has kind of turned their back on, and I'm probably alone on this from most of others at this table. The state turned their back on mental health. The state turned their back on education of funding for our school systems in its entirety. We've passed several acts over the years. Keith's right, there's some failures. We all recognize that. If anybody's interested, we're going to a brush fire on Chester Road. So therefore, there's a lot that is wrong with our schools and how the education is put for the kids. And there's a lot. Kids don't ride buses anymore. The social economics in our communities advocates that Springfield is on the receiving end of state funding, and we're thankful for that. The way the current act is legislation is in place. The school boards determine what their budgets are. They put that out for the voters. The legislature doesn't initiate what the budgets are for schools. The legislative job is to pay for education from the information in the budgets that come from all the school systems. So there is some efforts to collaboration, maybe reduce school sizes or school numbers and consolidate. We tried that a few years ago and met some significant resistance in some communities. So it's not an easy question. It's not going to be answered in one simple sentence, but certainly getting some outside sources to deal with our social economic children in our schools, such as mental health and social behavior, would be the interest that I would look at trying to change.
Thank you. Judy?
My favorite subject. I look at schools. What? Okay. I look at schools today as to when I went to school, big difference. Classes were much bigger. You didn't have all the disruptions, but we had teachers that would take their time, invite you over to their house at night, discuss what was going wrong with you, and if you needed help in any way. And I had a couple of teachers that were very patient with me because there's certain classes I did not like. I'd rather sit way back there and read a book. But it's amazing how much I still retain from that one class. He would be proud. But as I've watched the schools here, my daughter went in, well, she went to North School, and she had very good teachers. And as she progressed, she did have one teacher in the high school that gave her an issue. So I had a meeting. Parents can have meetings with the superintendent and the principal and the teacher. All they have to do is step forward and do it. And it was taken care of. I didn't sit there and throw a hissy fit. I just stated my cause, what was going on. And I was told, well, that's because she's a teenage girl. Don't ever tell me that. Because all boys and girls have problems. I've seen kids, I had 2 great grandchildren here. They're no longer here because they were being bullied. And when you're being bullied, you can't learn. If you stand up for yourself, you're the one in trouble. And I've seen this with a lot of the things going on here. We have, God only knows how many children shipped out to other schools, and the cost of $100,000 a year. And this came from one man that I know who is a director of one of the schools. And we can't afford to keep that up, and we need to work on them. If you need to get monitors in that school to patrol the schools and go in the bathrooms and make sure things are being behaved, that could cut a lot of money off and give us more money to work with the kids. And some of them that have needed help can't get it from home, so you've got to do it in a school. I had a principal in high school, I'll tell you, you don't dare cross over that line. Because if you did, he would expel you. If you're man or woman enough to do that, I don't want you here anymore. Get out and get a job.
Okay, so what is your one thing that you would do if you were in the legislature that would help?
I would let the schools, there are things they need to do up there to have together for the Department of Education, but they need to let the schools have some control themselves, and it doesn't seem to have a lot of control. And also, we should get itemized budgets from them and our school system, which will help us and help the parents. But I just want to see most of the power to come back to the school. You've got some, because we need guidance, but we need it in the right direction. And I'm sorry if I keep moving this thing around. But I'd like to see it where they actually get an education, where the teachers don't have to be mom and dad. There's a child in White River who had issues. She wasn't even potty trained. She was still in a diaper when she
Okay.
went to school. And that shouldn't be. So,
Okay, Alice?
You know, I think right now we are at a crossroads in the state in terms of where does our educational system go? If it wasn't at a crossroad and we weren't concerned about it, the solution would already be there. It's a very tough nut to crack. Christy laid out that part of the issue is funding. It is funding. But also, if you look at your school budgets and you look at the needs within our schools, there's a lot of human services, behavioral health issues that are deterring folks, deterring our students from learning. And it's all being pushed on our property taxes. It should come away from our property taxes. A portion of that should go to the Agency of Human Services to be funded in the general fund budget and out of their budgets. That could be the Department of Mental Health. That could be the Department of Health. That could be the Department of Substance Use. That's what we need to look at this point. We also need to look at where do our local communities want to go with their schools. We think it's going to be easy in some parts of the state that, yes, you can consolidate, you're going to have a better educational outcome for your students, and we're going to save money. I don't know if that's true or not. I think it depends where you live. We just had two rural areas in this state that voted to keep their small schools because it's the hub of their community. If a community wants to do that, they ought to be able to do that. But it's going to be expensive to keep that small school open. But that's a decision that occurs locally. And that's where those decisions need to occur, not at the state level.
Okay, so we're going to open it up to audience members. If you raise your hand, I'll bring the microphone to you. Keep your question succinct, please.
Well, you say here on suggested questions, regardless of the form it takes, what would you like to see Vermont's Affordable Heat Act do? Very simply, make heat affordable. Putting more taxes on it does not make it affordable.
The question is about the HEAT Act. You can
Heat's
start,
on me?
Alice. Yeah.
I think we have a long ways to go. We are going to be getting a report in terms of the initiatives, how we can provide help for folks in terms of converting their heating system over to a cleaner type of heating system.
I'm gonna interrupt, and I think the audience members also want to know what your intentions are in terms of when it comes back to the legislature.
My intentions is to look to the committees of jurisdiction that are going to be doing the work on this and dissecting what the report says and figuring out if and how we move forward. We may not do anything because the way the legislation was written, the Public Utilities Commission was to do the work, come back to the legislature with some proposals. That's what's going to be before us come January. We can accept those proposals, we can change them, or we can say no to them and do nothing. So I'm letting the legislative process work out. I'm letting the committees of jurisdiction do their due diligence and see where we end up. And I hope we do not end up with making heating more unaffordable. We have no control now in terms of what our fuel companies are charging us. It may be the way to go. We need to start regulating our fuel companies. We regulate electricity, we regulate gas. We do not regulate fossil fuel.
Hearing you correctly, you're waiting until the committee gets all the information. Have you read what has been put out already?
I've gone over it, yes.
Okay.
But it will be those committees of jurisdiction that will do the deeper dive.
Okay, and then they bring the full bill to the legislature, and then you get to choose whether you're going to support it or not.
They may bring a bill, they may decide not to do anything. They may bring a bill to the full legislature, and at that point, you look at the legislation and you decide, is this something you can work with? Is this something that needs to be changed? Do you support it or do you not support it?
So there's a lot of research behind it that has to be done.
A lot
That's
of
what I'm
research and a lot of steps.
Okay, Judy?
I would like to see some of these regulations that is hurting the oil companies go away, let them help us because they are willing to do that. I buy the oil for the North Springfield Baptist Church, and anybody that's a member of that church can have the oil at the same price. So we get a bid in, and then we're stuck with it. And I've never been disappointed. And it's never skyrocketed, and we made out good, and it's never dropped. But so many people can't afford it, and I see they're running out now and putting in these heat pumps. I saw one put a heat pump in, and I thought, boy, are you nuts, because when it floods, it's taking out that heat pump. And houses aren't well insulated, so they need to be insulated, and that will help keep down the use of the oil. But unless I see an overall view, and I try to do my best, I won't know exactly how to do it, but it doesn't mean I won't give my best. And I just see so many people just saying, well, it's your fault, it's your fault, it's your fault. No, it's nobody's fault. We've just slacked off too many times over the years and just let it take off. And we need to control it, rein it back in, quit putting blame on this one and this one and this one. Because, and especially when it comes to the weather, because that man upstairs has control of the weather, not me.
So it sounds to me like you would not be in favor of the heat standard. Am I correct?
I just think the better you can do for it is to insulate these homes. And because anything you try is going to do more harm in the future.
So those that cannot afford to insulate their homes, is there any role of the legislature in that?
Well, there's things they're planning now to help them pay for their fuel, help them insulate those homes.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, just for 1 second, I had to fight with some older men and I learned how to circumvent them because I wanted to insulate our attic in our church. And if you see the church, you know how huge that is. And I learned how to get around them and get the congregation to get in on it. We insulated that attic. That first year, we saved 900 gallons of fuel. And we have continued to insulate as we have the money. And we got one floor left to do, but we're saving money hand over fist.
Thank you. Christy, heat standard.
Sure, thanks for the question. This one was actually in my committee last year and was passed out. I had some angst against it, the way it was originally written, and that was softened from implementation to charging the PUC to stand up a plan so that we could review what that might be and what the cost might be on the consumer. It's unfortunate that the governor's office, and I'm not blaming anybody, I'm just saying this is factual. The governor's office administration put out that it was going to be 70 cents a gallon originally. Fuel oil dealers put out it was going to be $2 or $4 a gallon, respectively. Again, not finding blame, but this was literature that was passed out to consumers. Recently, the PUC stood up their draft of what the plan might look like. And I have reviewed that, but it's a draft. And it's got to go a long way before it comes back before any legislature for action. However, it was put out that it was going to be $17.5 billion over 10 years for the consumer. That was softened down to $10 billion. So the point is, this is all misinformation. It's all designed to distract the consumer, to influence the voters so that this program doesn't get implemented. Judy mentioned they insulated the attic of a church and saved 900 gallons. That's what this bill does. This bill, if passed, would insulate low to moderate income homeowner homes that would provide for incentives for heat pumps, all designed around saving of fossil fuel. Who here burns fossil fuel? And 3 or 4 years ago, the price went up to almost $5 a gallon. It was $4.90. It was ridiculous. The year after, the price went down to $4.35. And you can say that, but I can show you my contracts. We budgeted 500 gallons a year. At those prices, that's a lot of money. We installed heat pumps. This is a living experience. We installed the heat pumps. My fuel oil usage went down to 80 gallons the first year. Yes, the electric bill comes up some, but there was almost $1,500, almost $2,000 worth of savings that first year. The next year, we burned, because the cold weather heat pumps don't necessarily heat efficiently when it's really cold. So the next year, we burnt 125 gallons. So there is a savings from 500 gallons that were contracted down to 80 or 125. There is an expense for installation. This bill offers incentives to put those installations in people's homes. That's what this is designed to do. She mentioned 900 gallons of savings. That's what this bill will do for our consumers. It's going to save money in their pockets at a little bit of a cost. Wrap it up. I get it. Usually my wife stands up.
Keith,
Thank you, Sue.
heat standard, your thoughts?
Okay, first of all, does anybody know of any oil company that isn't looking for alternative sources? They're all working on it. I mean, right now, it just doesn't exist. You could talk about solar, you could talk about wind. The efficiency is so poor that it's just not there. Nuclear, you say nuclear and everybody goes out of their mind. We have to keep going with what we have that makes sense. Sure, we want insulated homes. Give them low interest loans. Doesn't that make more sense? Or just taking support a low interest loan with a bank for them. There's ways around that. We don't have to penalize people that are stuck burning fossil fuels now. There's no need to do that. We can do it in a practical, effective way. But jumping on this carbon tax, that's what it is, no matter who wants to deny it, is not a practical idea. It's going to hurt a lot of people.
Okay, so it sounds like you would not be in favor of the heat standard.
Oh, absolutely not.
Okay, so I'm going to just jump in on the next logical discussion in terms of climate change. Do you believe that there is an issue with climate change and how it's affecting our weather and everything else that's going on here?
It is what it is. It's cyclical. We know that from just research of past. We know that the planet was warmer at one point than it is now. It's going to change on its own. There's a Nobel-winning physicist that said that man has no part of global warming. I mean, this guy's a Nobel Peace Prize winner. Why would he ruin his reputation by saying something that he's not absolutely positive about? I mean, we see warming. It's obvious it's warming. This was a glacier here at one point. Did humans have anything to do with that? No, it's the way the planet is set up. It changes.
Okay, thank you. Christy, global warming.
Sure. So we've heard this question before as well. There's a lot of science that goes behind this information. People are right. We used to be warmer back when the dinosaurs were here and the meteor hit and we got wiped out. They got wiped out and along came us. Yes, it is somewhat cyclatory, but we're talking over millions of years. So what's going to happen within our lifespan, our children's lifespan, our grandkids' lifespan isn't a million years. It's what efforts can we take at this point in time. I like to take the global warming conversation on a piece of paper, crunch it up and throw it away. It's climate migration. Back in the 80s, we didn't have ticks in Vermont. You had to go to Massachusetts to find them. What's here now? Ticks. It's bad. There's invasive species, invasive insects, birds are changing, and this may be cyclatory. If that's your answer, you can have that. That's fine. I'm not going to debate that. But doing nothing, is that the option that we want to take? Or should we at least look at what efforts we can do to implement savings or reduction in carbon emissions, find alternatives, and do what we can? Because the storms that we're seeing recently are wiping out some of our communities. You have to look no further than last week in North Carolina with Milton, Hurricane Milton. They're never going to recover from that. It's going to be years and billions of dollars. Who pays for that? Who pays for that billions and billions and billions of dollars? Taxpayers. We do. So we're paying for it anyway. Why can't we address some situations to look at alternatives, to take some efforts to reduce our impact? Whether you agree with it or not, climate migration is here.
I had this conversation not too long about a gentleman. I'm saying that we had the heat and we had the ice age, which destroyed the dinosaurs, which I would rather not go out and meet a T-Rex. And he reminded me we still have some of the dinosaurs like the chickens, the alligators and such. At least they're manageable. But where I grew up, it's been warmer. It was never really cold. It felt cold. It could be 20 degrees. It felt like 50 below because of the moisture and everything. And here it does get 30 below. And in 1993, 92 and 93 is 30 below almost the entire winter. I know because we went through 2 full tanks of propane in less than 2 weeks up in White River, and our building was insulated. And we drove, and we had one truck that kept freezing up from that. And yet, my family doesn't consider it cold because it's a drier cold. But we got so much snow there too. In February of that year, we had probably over 2 feet of snow. It came in on a Saturday, and we got done real early and headed home. Got there just in time. But I mean, I've seen in '69 when I first here in January, I was up for the weekend. I got stuck an extra day and got chewed out. But the good Lord sent about 3 feet of snow, and it was so bad in this town. The police were taking the workers to the hospital, home and back and forth all day long, because nobody could get through. My ex-husband's family lived up on Randall Street. He worked down at Springfield Plumbing. He walked to work because you could not get out on the roads.
A little bit, and so do you believe in global warming or not?
Not really. It's just a natural, I mean, yes, it does happen, but I don't believe we're the cause of it.
Okay, thank you. Alice?
Yes, I do believe in global warming, and I do believe in climate change. I've seen it in my lifetime, and we all have here. You can just look around to see what's happening in terms of the weather events we've had here in Vermont. In 2 years, over 2 summers, we've had drastic flooding. That is devastating our communities, and we may not think we're paying for it. We are paying for it one way or another. You can look at your house insurance. That's going up, and it's going to go up even more because of what's happened down south. We're paying for this, and it's not an easy solution, but my philosophy has always been we have responsibilities in terms of what we contribute to our environment and how we protect it.
Thank you. Audience questions?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Mike Jasinski in Springfield. I wrote to the Secretary of Treasury and asked him what our situation was financially. So I don't know if you guys are aware of what's going on in your thought process of what you're going to spend for the following year. But this is what she wrote me. Total debt services for FY24, $71,025,873. Out of that, $49,685,000 principal, and $21,340,873 of interest. That's just for one thing. Total debt services for FY25, which you guys are going to be involved with, $78,551,833. Now we have a principal of $56,125,000. So, and then the $22,426,833 is of interest. Now the pensions unfunded liabilities. FY23 were $1.6 billion unfunded state employee and 1.79 teachers. And then I'm going to get one more that she sent me, and I'll let you discuss what you think about this. Well, this is the other part of it. So she said the unfunded liabilities at the end of 2000, whoops, excuse me, I gotta go to the other one, pardon me. She sent me 2 separate emails, I'm so sorry. Yeah, okay, we'll just wrap up and saying is that with all these things that you guys want to do for the good of the country or the good of the people of Vermont, you haven't met your obligations of which you already owe. And if you continue to spend the way you are, taxpayers are never going to be able to get out of debt, and you're not going to be collecting taxes from people very soon because they got no money. So what are you going to do about it?
So the question is basically that we're looking at the debt that the state has and how are we addressing balancing the budget?
So I can address the debt load of the 71, $78 million. That comes directly from how much we bond for capital infrastructure in our state. And by capital infrastructure, I mean buildings that are owned by the state. That's the state office building down here in Springfield. That's our courthouses. And that's other state office buildings across the state. We also bond to help communities with their wastewater and drinking water systems so that it doesn't get focused totally on the local property tax. We pick that up on the state level. We have a bonding capacity of about $50 to $54 million a year. It used to be, just a few years ago, in the 70s. But because of the pressure of bonding and the interest that you pay on that over 20 years, when we bond for a project, the bond is 20 years life. We have been putting into place the last couple of years a process that we're paying more cash for our projects than bonding as a way to bring down our debt load. So that's what we have done, and we've continued to do that. We have put in over $25 million a year for the last 2 years for construction projects that would have been bonded for. And by paying cash, it's like your own home. If you can buy something outright versus putting it on your credit card, you're saving money in the long run. And that's what we're attempting to do on the state level.
What you're saying, Alice, is that the debt level has been higher in the past?
That's
And
correct.
now it's a little bit lower?
That's correct. And by keeping our debt load down, we are working with our credit agencies to keep our credit rating up. We have one of the highest credit ratings in the country. So what that relates to is when the state does go out and borrow money, we're borrowing money at a much lower interest rate. And it's not only the state, it's our towns. When towns or school districts go out to bond, they're bonding at their interest rate is at a much lower rate because of the state's high credit rating.
And what is that credit rating?
Some of it is almost AAA, and some of it is AA plus.
Thank you.
You didn't address the unfunded liabilities of the pension system. That was part 2.
Okay.
Please.
Pension.
We put in quite a bit of money of that in that about 2 years ago. I'm not sure how much extra we've put in, but we had an agreement with the state employees as well as with the teachers union. We all came together and we figured out how much money to put in per year, and we upped that by a tremendous amount. It's not going to be resolved in a 1 or 2 year budget cycle. It's going to take a number of budget cycles to do this, but the legislature has committed to it. The state employees union has committed to it, as has the teachers union.
So are the unions putting in a higher percentage of their pay at this point to bring that?
In some places, yes.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So Judy, balancing the budget. And I know that you've done things in the past, you know, and you've done a great job in your companies and your church. What would you do differently in the legislature?
Well, I've made it a fact to get everything paid off that I own personally. And when I need it done, then I have cash to pay it with, because I don't like owing people money. But that's what I would try to do, is as much as I can pay cash. And if I have to borrow, I look around for my best rates of what I can do. And then get paid off early, because then you save. I paid my house off 10 years before the thing came due. And anytime I have to spend money to borrow money to do that, I just cry. Ask Keith, he'll tell you. But I just like to look at the whole the picture and see how I can cut here and here, still save money for future things that I need, but how to cut money so that I have a backup. And I'd like to see the same thing. You need a little kitty to keep it in. Actually, with the state, it'd be a big kitty. But I like to save aside so that when I need something, I can get it done.
So
And I
how,
just hate going into debt, but I would have to look everything over and see what's going on.
okay, so are there areas in the budget that you think are, I don't know how familiar you are with the state budget, because I'm not. Are there areas in the state budget that you would recommend cutting in order to save that money aside? Because I know my own, I don't go out to eat, and that's how I save money.
Yeah.
So how would the state save the money that they need for these projects?
That, I would have to see the budget and what everything is. I can say it blindly, but it doesn't mean anything. But I just know that how I do it, and Keith can tell you how cheap I am. Actually, my grandchildren used to go around going, cheap, 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 Grandma.
No, you're frugal.
They did.
Thank you. Thank
But
you.
I will admit it. I mean, I've been that way.
Mhm.
I carried a newspaper for 7 years. And our newspaper, you had to put so much away each week of your earnings. So I chose to put that away. And when I gave up my newspaper, I had $1,000 in my account, plus another bank account that I personally put away. And none of my sisters or brothers were quite like me.
We
I think Mom
appreciate
said,
your
"Thank
frugality. I'm going to move on if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Christy, unfunded liabilities, pension, and balancing the budget.
Yep, got it. How many here have a home mortgage? Don't raise your hand. How many here have a car payment? Again, don't raise your hands. But that's how we bought our homes. That's how we fund our cars, and we pay for it over time. And yes, there's interest involved. That's how banks survive, or the lending institutions. Vermont is no different. With all the services that we are responsible for covering, and that includes all of the budget items, whether it's healthcare, education, staffing, insurances, it just goes on and on and on, that what we're responsible for paying, plus the pensions. There's money that goes into the pensions. It hasn't been funded appropriately over the years. There's nobody on this panel that's responsible for that. It's just what's happened over the years. It's a lack of the proper funding at the time when these things were these pensions were instituted years and years ago. We're paying for it now. This legislature, within the past 3 years, has taken initiatives to address that. We had a committee, a task force that broke off and met with the union representatives from both the teachers and the state employees, and we've addressed that. The treasurer is happy with the program. There's going to be it's a payback plan, just like your mortgages, just like your car payments. There's payments in place that over time will pay for that. Yes, we do have interest charges, and yes, we're responsible for them. What's the alternative? We're going to address all these things, schools and everything else, and we're going to charge our taxpayers to get that money. Taxes. That's, if you want to pay for it now, then you raise more money, more revenues. That's not what this legislation or this administration is wanting to do. So therefore, we have to take out bonds and accumulate debt. And then now responsible parties are trying to address that and pay it back accordingly. Regarding the budget itself, it's the same thing. It's revenues versus expenses. What services do people want to cut? What towns don't want to get funded for their flooding? What schools don't want to receive money for their expenses? I don't want Springfield to be part of that. And that's why I support the budgets the way they are, with sound minds and sound implementation of the programs so that we can pay for these things in a responsible way.
Thank you. Keith?
Okay, like I said at the beginning, I believe in innovative ideas. I believe in setting up an efficiency board, getting volunteers to look at the budget. Nobody in this room can convince me that there isn't waste in that budget within the state. It's just unbelievable that that couldn't be happening. Why not search it out? What's it cost? We got to look at priorities. Maybe something we'll have to wait 1 year to be able to afford to do it. I'm not talking social services or something like that, but there's plenty of places that could wait a year and save that money. One thing, talking innovation, why are we seeing all these trucking companies? Look up the road here, Black River. Not one of those trucks are registered in Vermont. We're losing a lot of revenue from these trucking companies that register out of state. Why aren't we saying register here? We'll give you the same deal you're getting in the state you're in, but register here. We need that revenue.
So someone else that has a question from the audience?
What would you guys do to combat the drug epidemic and the violent crime rise that's happening in Vermont?
Want me to go first? One thing is we have to be tough on crime. We have prosecutors that are giving such light sentences. There's got to be a cost analysis to this. The reward, when the rewards outweigh the penalties, there's no disincentive there. We're seeing that a lot. And we got to be putting more money into treatment centers. Taking in, giving $1 million to set up a safe site for injecting, that to me is insane that we're saying here, we'll let you kill yourself slowly, but we don't want you to do it instantly. You got to be able to do that. What's it going to do? People, drug addicts are going to go to Burlington because they know, geez, it's much safer to be an addict here. What does that bring? That brings prostitution. It brings more drugs, a whole litany of more crimes. What's our priorities here?
Okay, so I want to just give some information based on when the state's attorney came to the library. He had said that they don't put the drug users into prison because the prisons are overloaded.
Oh, I'm not saying the drug users. I'm talking about the drug dealers.
Okay, thank you. All right, Christy.
Sure. So again, another very, very complicated problem. And if you think it's an easy solution, I would say that you need to immerse yourself in all of the entities, components that exist under the umbrella that would cover public safety, public service to people who are addicted. I also belong to Project Action in Springfield, which is an acronym for Assembling Community to Improve Our Neighborhoods. There's people in this room that are familiar with that. We've taken some action lately. It's a collaboration of public servants, health agencies, mental health, law enforcement, state's attorney's office, the state of Vermont, public safety board. It's a representative from each of these that collaborate on how we can best address drug addiction and mental health. I'm going to throw both of those together because it does involve both. It's Keith mentioned the Overdose Prevention Center in Burlington, which I did not support. That was $1 million program. That $1 million could have been used best for turning point recovery systems, which there are 12 in the state of Vermont, located in different counties. There's 14 counties, but only 12 turning points. So a couple of them are combined. That $1 million would have put more personnel, more programs into the treatment prevention side of this equation. It also gets into our school systems where education for our student population, they're getting exposed to the drugs and whether it's vaping or cannabis or something worse, they're being exposed to it. We just went to the Vermont Recovery Program at Killington this past week. Tuesday morning, I went up. There's a program in Newport getting into, instead of the high schools, because they found that a percentage of high schoolers are already using to some extent, whether it's vape or cannabis or some other drug component. So they're pushing down into the middle schools. I would like to see mandates where these programs, social service treatment and prevention programs, are allowed in the school systems. They're not in Springfield entirely. Springfield School has their own counselors and their own program, but we're seeing more effect from people that were previous users or counselors. They're exposed to this problem. Instead of education, they're exposed to the predicament we're in with drugs and alcohol. It's not just drugs. And I would like to see more effort from the state to let these agencies in the school systems to address it at the junior high level. We're not going to get out of this anytime. We cannot arrest our way out of it. It's 65,000 to incarcerate somebody a year and more. That's not the answer. That's more money. Who pays for that? Taxpayers. That's not what we want to do. We need to find alternatives for these programs in incarceration. I am all for arresting the dealers that are coming from out of state and tossing their butts in jail. I'm all for that. But the casual user they could be friends, they could be neighbors, and they could be your next door person or living within your homes. I don't know. We need to address that. Sorry.
Are we getting the answers you're looking for, sir? Yeah. Thank you. Go ahead, Judy.
She wasn't here for the
Oh, could you repeat the question? Hold on.
What would you do to combat the drug epidemic in Vermont and the violent crimes that's rising?
I won't give you my real answer. But it's a battle I think we're never going to win, and I hate that fact. But I can tell you, not only Vermont's facing it. I was on federal grand jury a few years, 19 to 18 months from 19 into 20. And of all the cases we went through, there was one embezzlement, child molestation, and maybe 6 different arson and such. Out of all the cases, only 6 to 7 of them were not drug related. And it's a battle on their hands. And trying to do something about it and trying to stop it. They said, well, they pay cash, there's not much we can do. But it's a battle. And on grand jury like that, it's not at one time, it goes through several things before you have to come to the. But I know it's like, I would like to see the drug dealers all go away. But they prey on innocent people. Well, not so much innocent, but people that are depressed and they have issues. And I've seen that in a lot of things that I read and the people I know. And the best thing you can do if you know somebody that is suffering in that way, let them talk to you. If they come to talk to you, that helps them. And that'll get them away. And you save enough from for the dealers are going to go away. Because if they can't make money, they're not going to hang around. But if you, like I said, if you know somebody, you sit and if they want to talk to you, just don't say, I don't have time, I don't want to hear it. Sit down and listen. And listen and listen. And that helps them. You help them. And when they are helped, you won't have dealers after a while.
Okay. Thank you, Judy. Alice? How are we solving the drug epidemic?
Dealers prey on people that have no hope, and they prey where there's a market. So if you really want to address it, you have to look at why there's a market and why people have no hope. That's the underlying issue. But how do we do that? I'm part of Project Action here in Springfield as well. And we've been working to coordinate. We meet once a week. There's a group of providers here in Springfield. It could be supportive housing. It could be the Family Center, our county sheriff, our local law enforcement, North Star, our hospital. All the providers come together and talk about situations that are occurring. It could be someone who's homeless. It could be a domestic violence call that our local law enforcement is called out to. They can then, if they get to that situation, there's substance use that's occurring, they can call Turning Point to accompany the law enforcement officer to that home to try to intervene. Those are mechanisms that are currently happening here in Springfield that's helping folks. But we have to remember that those folks who are using, they're the ones that determine if they want help or not. You can bring a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. So the more times you can intervene with someone to provide some help, there may be one time after 20 times that they'll say, yes, I need some help. The other thing that we're doing here in Springfield, we're doing statewide, is Turning Point is working. We're putting recovery coaches within our correctional facilities to work with folks who have substance misuse disorder, to make a connection for when that person reenters the community, they have someone they can go to. The other thing that we've done on the state level is we've started to really beef up our court system, because you do a tremendous amount of damage when someone is arrested and charged, but you don't have any consequences to that for 3 or 4 months. The best avenue is there's a direct consequence quickly to that charge. So we're beefing up our court system through putting in more judges. We're beefing up our state's attorney's offices and our defense counsel.
Thank you. Other questions of people that haven't asked yet?
Yes, I'm Ray Stalker. I've been a Democrat for probably 60 years. I'm having a little trouble this year with the Democrats raising the taxes so high and spending and not working with our governor. So I will probably be voting Republican this year. And I have one question, excuse me, to ask the Republican candidates. To me, there is 2 different Republicans today. I want to know if you are a Governor Scott representative, or if you are a Donald Trump representative.
Okay, so that's to Judy and Keith.
I do not support Governor Scott. I still haven't made up my mind on the presidentials. There are others, not just 2.
Thank you. Keith?
Why can't you be both, actually? There is middle ground. Nobody wants to look at middle ground. There is middle ground. I mean, the governor wants to have
Keith, do you support Governor Scott?
to a point,
Okay.
to
Do
a
you-
point, and I
okay.
support Trump to a point.
Okay,
I mean,
so which part do you not support Governor Scott on?
I think he's not really holding the Republican platform on different issues. I think he's too willing to settle. Some of the things he settles is fine with me, but I can't specify
Okay,
And-
so.
But it's, you got to take the good and the bad with any candidate.
Right. So what parts of former President Trump do you not agree with?
There's, to point out things, I don't like his personality at all. I think he's too abrasive. Let's see, what policies? He's great on the border. His tax stance, I don't think he should be giving such tax breaks to the wealthy. That's something we differ on. If
I
you
know
name,
it's
if,
tough.
yeah, if you name some things, I could say yes
Okay.
or no.
So I'm going to get
But-
another question.
I just want to know, I know that you've had a lot of drug raids and maybe, I just want to know, do you think having gone after people on Valley Street and Union Street, has the town gotten any safer? Because I hear some pretty bad horror stories and I know the town is fighting it, but I just want your opinion on the truth, what's going on.
Keith?
I don't really follow that to give an opinion.
Christy?
Sure. I mean, I'm willing to answer this, but I think this is more of a local
It is.
issue and I'm a select board member in Springfield, so I can speak to it. We have taken some initiative from a select board standpoint where expecting outside entities such as the state of Vermont, the federal government, or Charlestown, New Hampshire, or any other town to come over here and help us. Didn't happen. It's not going to happen. So, and I'm not talking about current law enforcement issues. I'm talking about coming over here to help us with the drug problems, to clean up our neighborhoods, to take down drug-infested buildings, et cetera. We've done that ourselves. So the citizens of this community did approve a $100,000 program for Springfield. That it's an initiative through the select board that we ended up buying out some buildings and taking them down. So we're trying to clean up some of those. I think Union Street looks marvelous now from what it used to look like, or what it was. I think Valley Street is getting there. We've got more to do. We have had federal partners in state partners in helping our local law enforcement address some of the drug issues on Valley Street. Those people are still incarcerated. They went through the federal program. So it's not a slap on the wrist and a rotary door program. They're gone. They're
Okay.
serving time elsewhere in the federal penitentiaries.
Okay,
So we are,
yeah, and this is a local issue, I'm sorry.
yep.
And we have about 15 minutes left.
I have no problem walking the streets of Springfield.
Quickly, Judy, yes or no? Is it better or not?
I don't really know because I live in North Springfield and we don't have it. I have had an issue years ago where I knew I had a neighbor who was dealing. And I called in, actually, I don't care where I'm at. If I see it, I call it.
Thank you. Alice, better or worse?
Yes, I think we are better. And in working with our local law enforcement with Project Action, the data is showing that we are much safer here in Springfield.
Thank you. Anyone else that has not asked a question?
What are your thoughts on the fact that schools are now getting rid of all their art programs as well as things like home ec and things like that?
Alice?
I think it's very sad. I really feel strongly that students learn differently. And, you know, art, music, the home ec, whatever, some students really need that. And they need that for the support. And they need that for learning. It's not always academics. Academics is important. But for some students, they need some support in other areas, and they excel at that. And unfortunately, those items are usually on the chopping block when school budgets are under pressure. And I think in the long run, it hurts our community.
Thank you. Judy?
I agree with that. It's a big disservice to the children. And there are some of them that will grow up and end up great artists. Musicians, we had a lot of good musicians from Springfield. One of them teaches, well, she might be retired by now, teaches down in Hartford, Connecticut. And this is how she got her start up here. Keith with a band went to Vienna. But we need that. We need home ec, and home ec is not just for girls. I argued that with my teacher, my principal when I was in high school. I wanted auto mechanics. Too many boys in there. I got older brothers and their friends. I can deal with it. But kids need this, and it's all part of growing up because you don't always learn from your mother about home ecs and what to do. I did. But they had good classes. The woman that was there was a good teacher. And we need that here. These kids need to learn. They need to learn to be able to stand on their feet. And I don't know if they're doing away with the shop classes, but my daughter made a little piggy cutting board there. And everybody, and the things that my great-granddaughter has been learning where she went to school for in shop classes and stuff, they've learned stuff that I bet you my brothers didn't know in high school.
Thank you.
And it's very necessary for them. It's well-rounded education.
Thank you. And we're doing sewing classes here at the library. I'll do a plug there.
Most unfortunate. However, what happens to our school budgets in Springfield annually? They get voted down. So what happens is they have to look at non-essential programs and whether they're non-essential, whether art, music fits that. Our children were in the music program. We have a granddaughter that's a wonderful artist. Came from another school district though. However, school budgets get voted down. So the school board goes back and looks at where can they save money? Where can they save the funding? It was stated, I believe, I'm going by memory and I could be wrong on the exact numbers, but to save $1 million from a school budget, you're looking at 14 teachers, roughly. It might have been 12. It's 12 to 14, somewhere in that range. So what happens if you got to cut the budget $750,000 or $1 million? Where are those teachers going to come from? Or what services are you going to cut? And unfortunately, they end up on the chopping block. Most unfortunate. I'm involved with the Shrine football game, the Maple Sugar Bowl football game with the All-Stars of New Hampshire and Vermont football players. We used to have a band. We can't find band members now. A lot of schools, when COVID came, a lot of them disappeared. Some are bouncing back, but we're not seeing it to the extent that it was. It is unfortunate.
Thank you. Keith.
Okay, sorry, Char. Yes, I agree. It is very sad. I believe there's innovative ways to cut spending without hurting programs. One thing is to look at is health care for the teachers. I don't believe anybody's ever looked at finding a less expensive health insurance carrier. I heard how much they spend a year on health insurance in Springfield, and it's astronomical. We got to look at things like that. Self-funding, alternative health care, things like there's a Catholic insurance program that's I think less than half of what Blue Cross Blue Shield is. We got to look at everything. Everything's got to be on the table. You can't just say, this is the way we've always done it. We're going to stick with it because it doesn't work. We've already seen that.
Okay. So, Shar.
Yeah, I'm just.
Char had her hand up when before I could answer.
This is for the Stearns. I really want to know where you stand in reference to Trump. So, for instance, in Vermont, we have dairy farmers who use Mexican immigrants to work on their farms. Now, Trump has said he wants to remove 11 million illegal immigrants from the United States, which would be a catastrophic undertaking, I think, at least. I would like to know where you stand on this.
I think that what he's actually referring to is criminals to begin with. We do have,
Stop, please. Go ahead, Keith.
I mean, to say he wants to remove all illegals is just talk, because it can never happen, first of all. Plus, there are migrant farm worker programs. We were in the produce business. We know the different farms that use them. The ones that use illegals is because it's very cheap for them. They don't pay what they're required to pay to the migrant workers.
So if the farmers are using those that are undocumented, then they are not allowed to use them anymore. What happens then?
I think there's got to be a pathway for them. If they're here, they're good citizens and all, yes, there's got to be a way to do it.
So you believe in a pathway to citizenship?
Yeah, I believe he actually believes it, but you know how it goes when you're campaigning. There's so much rhetoric thrown around.
Okay, so let's get Judy's
Okay.
response and then we'll go on to the next question. I think it'll be our last question.
A few years back, at the federal government, and I know people that were illegal immigrants working, and they were concerned, and I called Leahy's office, and I said, what about these farmers? They're not going to be able to do anything because you can't get people that want to work on a farm anymore. These are hardworking people. She says, we ignore them because we know if we don't leave them on those farms, we're not going to have any farms. And so I know that for a fact that that's what it's done.
So you don't support Trump in that particular?
He's got a lot of hot air in a lot of things,
Okay, thank you.
but yeah, I
right.
know that's a fact. there.
Shar.
Okay, we know the government is a nonprofit entity. They provide us with services and goods, both to our towns, our states, to us, the people. We know the costs that are hurting all of us are also hurting the government. They're driving costs up everywhere. What would you propose? And I don't know how much Vermont can do at the state level, but what about big pharma? I mean, they obviously hurt the vulnerable with the price of drugs. So what would you propose to do to get at the root cause of all these price raises?
Judy, do you want to start? Or you can pass it to Alice. Pass it to Alice. There we go. And then we'll go down the line.
You know, Shar, that one's a tough one because we're all in the same boat. You know, the issue is affordability. There's no way around it. And what you can do on a legislative end can be very limiting in terms of what's happening nationally. I feel quite strongly that there's a lot of price gouging going on out there. It's in our groceries. You can't get out of the grocery store for under $100. Everything is going up, and at some point it's going to crash because people can't afford it, and government can't afford it. You know, that's what's rising our school budgets. It's an increase in healthcare costs. It's an increase in fuel. It's an increase in health benefits. It's an increase in salaries. It's an increase in keeping your buildings going because everything is going up in terms of supplies. I wish I had the answer, but I don't. But I
Okay.
really think there's a lot of price gouging out there.
Okay, Judy.
Cross the border and get it cheaper. Yes, it is. Because my daughter has to take
Has to take a medicine.
thank you,
There we go.
because of extreme anything. The copay for that, one shot is to take a shot, then after that it's every 4 months. For one shot, her copay, but why can you go to Europe or somewhere and get the medication by the same people for a quarter of the price? And that's what they're doing. All the Americans are going to pay it. There was a prescription. I used to get a top tube. It cost me $23. I didn't use that often. And when I went in to get it the next time, he said, I got a small tube. Because the small tube alone is $103.
Is there anything at the legislation, the state legislature can do that you think?
I don't know how to
Okay.
go about it.
Okay.
But I know back in the late 50s and early 60s, Charles Pfizer, that's how I knew it, started sitting up down in South America, Brazil, India, Spain, setting up new companies, new areas to build and I think that's a lot of what messes. We can do it cheaper there, but we're going to keep it here and stick it to them. And as the time got on, the more they see people are dependent on some of these things, the higher the price.
Okay, thank
We've
you.
got to say no.
I want to give you time at the end to give a statement. So can we wrap up this question really quickly?
Yeah, so what can the state do? And there's been some experience with other programs that Vermont is doing, and albeit they're controversial. And that is partner with other states to look at how we can address various costs or components that are thrust upon Vermonters, and we don't have any control over it specifically. So if we could partner with New York or California, if they have interest in looking at big pharma, for example, and trying to cut down costs on, I thought it was ridiculous several years ago that bee sting kits, EpiPens. Thank you. Yep, it's a good thing we got a crowd here. It's involved. The EpiPens were what, $600 at one point, or it was ridiculous, and that's life saving. That shouldn't have happened. We did fight back on that a little bit, and those did get reduced some. It's a lot more work that needs to be done around healthcare. But it's the big companies, the big corporations. Look at the company that invented or marketed oxycodone. The Oxy tablets, they're being penalized right now. They get sued. There's that payment program back to for the opioid overdose programs that we're seeing. So there might be some initiatives there that we could look at. I don't know how effective we'd be, but we would need other partners, other states to do that.
Okay, Keith.
A lot of it is tort reform is what's needed. I don't know if it works at a state level, but I've read where we are paying for the malpractice insurance where the other countries aren't. And that's huge. Millions and millions and millions of dollars just for malpractice insurance. And if we can change that, fix that, that's going to drop prices. But in the meantime, I do kind of agree with Bernie, importing drugs from Canada and wherever. I think that's probably our best choice for now.
So you agree with the progressive Democrat?
I do.
Okay.
I agree with anybody
Sorry.
that makes sense. No, I just agree with whoever.
All right.
Like I
So-
said, innovation is what I believe in.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's fine.
So 2 minutes each to wrap up. Go ahead, Keith.
Okay.
Start now.
Okay. I wasn't going to run. I wasn't even thinking of voting anymore. I'm so depressed by what's happening in this state. And Judy said she was running. I said, okay, I got to vote. I got to vote for Judy. Okay. Then I started hearing about the huge increase in education, property taxes, and then, let's face it, carbon tax. So I said, I just have to do it. It might be a fool's errand again. I don't know. But just a few facts. Vermont is first in the country in the cost of living in relation to wages, second in homelessness, third in overall taxes per person. 2 in 5 Vermonters are living with food insecurity. We have sewage being dumped into our waterways. That should have been a priority, and it apparently isn't. I ran for governor against Phil Scott, actually, 6 years ago, and that was one of my issues, was Burlington dumping water into Lake Champlain. It's still going on. In Springfield, 47% are below Vermont's average. And 2,340 out of roughly 9,000 people are at or below the poverty line. Is this the best we can do? Really? Are those the priorities, or is it climate change? For me, it's this.
2 minutes. Sound like the Boston Garden or Fleet Center, or whatever they call it now. Keith's mentioned a lot of points. I'll touch on just a few of them. And I don't like this type of process where somebody says something, then I have a chance to critique, because he doesn't have a chance to critique me. But a lot of these programs take money, and and the state of Vermont is addressing a lot of them, and continues to address a lot of them. Yeah, it's expensive, and our taxes are high. I can pull up a map on my phone to show you the tax rates from every state in the union if anybody's interested, but I don't want to do that because I'm not sure of the where it came from now. However, every state pays taxes. So what tax level would be acceptable? If we matched New York, if we were lower than Maine, would that be acceptable? Or it's not something I'm proud of, but it's something that I think I can have an initiative in Montpelier and advocate for the citizens of Springfield. I'm going to give you a case in point. The educational property tax came out in January. It was going to be 20%. The legislature put some reserve funding into the educational fund, and we dropped that down to 14%. Springfield's tax rate was 4.4. That's why I could support it. If the yield tax bill had gone down, we would have reverted back to last year's budgets at 87%. It would have been an additional 15% tax increase on our residents. And I'm getting the hook. So therefore, I will advocate for Springfielders, and I think I'm responsible enough to consider all of the programs and do it where we financially can do it at best.
Okay. Have a friend out in Indiana, and I said, how much do you pay for property taxes? He says, I got a house, two-car garage attached. I have a 4-car garage and 4 lots, and he pays $900 for the year. A lot more people out there than there are here. But as much as I'd like to see it down, I own 4 homes because I bought 2 at auctions and another one that was up for sale that my grandchildren and my daughter live in. The grandchildren were in places they shouldn't be, and this was my way of helping them. But it would be nice to see the taxes go down. There should be, well, one-way Springfield. Like I said, if we can get these children back here in town and treated appropriately, that would save us probably close to $1 million or more. They're sent to alternative schools at $100,000 a student. And it's tough doing it because everything is up and up and up and up. And even the schools are paying higher utility bills. So best I can say is be conservative, help these children get an education. And if it takes going in and volunteering to help, do it. I volunteered 4 days a week when my daughter was in kindergarten. And when she at 1st and 2nd grade, I was up there 2 or 3 days a week helping them out. But they need good people in there helping. And some of them, if that child needs some other help, like to talk to you, they can do that. Get involved, go join Girl Scouts. I did that too.
First off, I want to thank you for holding this today. I think it's been very, very helpful. I have always, as I stated before, I've always worked across the aisle. I will continue to do that, to find compromise. We have a lot of needs in the state. Keith mentioned that. Christy mentioned that, as did Judy. We have to pay for that. And that's the issue. How do you balance that? Because our population base is not there to spread it out evenly. And every state has taxes. If they don't have an income tax, they have a lot of fees. Some places have personal property tax on your vehicles to register your vehicles. We don't have that here in the state. It's very easy to ask for things. It's harder to pay for it. And that's what we do on the legislative end. We balance it out. And yes, this last time was really, really difficult because there were a lot of needs out there, but we're at the point now where we have to be more diligent in what decisions we make, and we have to come to the table. The legislative branch and the executive branch in this state have got to come together and start working together, because people's lives are going to be at stake, as the health of communities will be as well.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. We close at 1 o'clock, so if you have individual questions for them, please feel free. And thank you all for attending.